Office Hours listeners, Lita Allguy are coming at you from the Praxis office. You might have heard me in the background of a couple of the recent episodes. That's because I'm the producer of the Office Hours podcast and the content strategist here at Praxis. Just wanted to tune in for a little bit to let you guys know about a very special offer that we have for homeschool students here at Praxis. We are offering a homeschool scholarship. This means that one homeschool student will receive a $12,000 scholarship to Praxis. Not only will you be getting the $12,000 tuition, but you will also get to keep the $14,400 that every Praxis participant makes during their apprenticeship. So if you're excited about this opportunity, or if you know of someone else that would really appreciate an opportunity like this, go to discoverpraxis.com/homeschool where you can learn more and apply. Again, that's discoverpraxis.com/homeschool. Make sure you apply before August the 31st of 2019. Also, fun fact, we recently released the 50th episode of Office Hours. So in honor of that, and in celebration of the Season 3 finale coming up soon, we decided to kick it back this episode and share our favorite moments from the entire show. So enjoy this episode and stay tuned for the epic event we have coming up for the Season 3 finale. That's it for today. Thanks for tuning in. Now back to Office Hours.
Welcome to the Office Hours podcast. This is TK Coleman and Isaac Morehouse. We're like the Geek Squad for your professional development. Got a job you're trying to get, a work-related issue you're trying to resolve, a project you're trying to complete, an obstacle that's holding you up? Well, you're in the right place. You bring the problem, we bring the nuts and bolts. This is where you get philosophical insight and actionable advice on how to take charge of your life and career.
So here's a topic that I want to discuss with you. I've been thinking a lot about this Peter Thiel quote that you and I have discussed before. And it's the notion that great people or successful people are people who know secrets. And the idea there is that there are certain levels of greatness or success or well-being that you can't achieve unless you know certain things, but there's something about the knowledge that can't be told to you. And if people do spell it out for you, then it's kind of like you lose your ability to experience the rewards that come along with acting on that knowledge. So I'll give kind of like an everyday example. Everyday example would be my wife likes flowers, and she particularly likes it when I surprise her with flowers. Now, it's okay if she tells me in general that she likes to be surprised by flowers. It's better if she doesn't have to tell me that. But this is a move that absolutely cannot work if she has to get to the point of spelling out for me. I would be very happy if on this day you sent me flowers while I'm at work. That would really make my day, right? Like the power of making that move, the ability that it has to make an impression on her comes from me being able to kind of read the signals and get to know her in a way that allows me to get that information on my own. And the more details, the more prescriptions that have to be given to me, the more I am deprived of the opportunity to actually have an impact. My work is reduced to being obedient, to following orders, to being someone who's doing something not to get in trouble, or just being somebody, that's just, keeping the peace, whatever it may be. And I think this actually applies to a lot of areas in life, but that's kind of the general way I understand it. And I think this is really critical when it comes to things like professional development. Every job you have, you're going to have a job description, formally or informally. You're going to have all these things you're told you absolutely need to do. And I think the difference between great workers and average workers is that the great workers always know that there's something that can't or won't be said in that job description that I need to do if I really want to get optimal value out of this experience. What do you think of that?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if that's really the way that secrets are used in 0 to 1. Peter Thiel talks about them, but we'll just discuss it.
But I got to figure that out on my own.
Yeah, exactly. I can't lay it out for you, TK. It's a secret that I'm keeping. No, there's absolutely and even take the example with your wife. it's like we play these games where we want people to know the secret and we actually want to set them up with an easy win. And so we'll say things like, man, I love flowers, or, I'm feeling just a little bit down today. And like, oh, I went to this garden and the flowers were just amazing. It'd be nice to have a garden someday, right? She's trying to tell you, give me flowers. And she's okay doing that. And then she hopes that you'll succeed at reading between the lines. But if she goes all the way and says, send me flowers today at noon, then you do it. It's like, yeah, but I had to tell you, right? And I see this professionally in a similar way. TK, you know this. We talk a lot about different stuff like this, like be responsive, blah, 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 or send thank you notes to people. Now, I've said this in like talks, presentations, in one-on-one conversations with young people that are asking for, career input or whatever. I'll be like, hey, always follow up every time you have a meeting or a conversation with people. And like the secret that I'm not saying is like this conversation we're having right now in this meeting, follow up with those people. Just send them a quick note saying thanks. And then I'll say, like after this meeting, and then I'll even go so far as to say, I mean, everybody, even if they don't want to talk to you again, is flattered by it. I love getting thank you notes, right? I'll basically say, send me a thank you note after this. And I'm not doing it because I'm so egotistical, like I need you to thank me and it's like a status thing. I don't care at all. I want to know. It's almost like a little subconscious test. And I'm not trying to play all kinds of crazy games, but like, do you feel me? Do you read between the lines? Do you kind of get the secret? Did you internalize the message? And 95% of the time, those people will say, that is great advice. I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to start sending thank you notes to people. That's great. And they don't send me a thank you note after that meeting. And it always cracks me up because it's like, that was the secret, right? And I'm not going to get mad at them, but it's like, and they might tend to get mad at me and be like, well, if you wanted me to send you a thank you, why didn't you just say, send me a thank you? I didn't know you were talking about you. That seemed too obvious. But if I were to say, send me a thank you note after this meeting, I would have robbed them of an opportunity to build a little extra social capital with me, because now they're just doing something I told them to do, which is like, not that doesn't tell me anything interesting about them. Doesn't tell me about their judgment, their ability to perceive. What am I really saying? Their thoughtfulness, their ability to apply something right away. But if I lay it out and say, everybody loves them, you should send them after every meeting. I love getting them. And it's almost like, it's almost become like a funny thing, like to see. But yeah, so there's definitely something. And again, you don't have to look at it all as some sort of conspiracy against you. It's really like, you can't have it any other way, right? Like your wife can't, if she's wondering if she wants to be reinforced or reminded of your level of attention to her and love and care, she kind of has to play a game, because she can't learn anything about you if she says, do this exact thing. And then you do that exact thing. What has she learned? Nothing, really, right? Like not very much at all. If she's like alluding to something, if you connect the dots, that means your level of attention was really a little bit higher. And then that makes her feel good, right? So like, it's an efficient, weird game series of games we play with these kind of secrets, but you can't tell people, part of the job is I expect you to stay here till midnight if I stay here till midnight as the boss. You would never want to say that. You legally might not be able to say that, right? But when that new employee comes in and they tell you how hardworking they are, and you and 2 other team members are pulling an all-nighter, and they know that, and they leave at 5, they missed a chance. They could be like, well, that's not in my job. They never asked me. No, but there's a secret here. They want to see if you'll pick up on it,
Yeah, what's interesting about that exact scenario you pointed out is that oftentimes people won't even let you go as far as you think you might need to go. So for instance, if you say something like, hey, I'm willing to be here and help out, I've been in a lot of those kinds of situations where after an extra hour, they say, hey, get out of here. Get out of here. We're not even gonna let you stay. Get out of here. But the fact that you signal to them that I'm willing to take some of my own time and put in an extra hour, it communicates things about you, these intangible things that can't quite be captured by your obedience to a job description. So it's like going back to the relationship thing. It's easy to get bitter at the games by saying, well, why can't you just come out and tell me? You're being manipulative. And it's like, no. There's something deeper here. It's what's being evaluated is not skill. What's being evaluated is not the ability to perform a task. It's not like What's valuable is my ability to know how to go buy flowers and give them to the right person. What's being evaluated, rather, and what's most meaningful is the ability to pick up on information when that information is not explicitly stated. And if you're running a business, what is most valuable to you when you're trusting your employees to interact with your customers? It's the ability to read the sorts of things that customers don't say. Because in most cases, your customers will not do that. Intentions, good or bad, they will not come out and spell it.
So here's the big secret for you.
Yeah.
I'm going to just give you it right here. In the professional world, we tend to, especially early on in the world of careers and whatever, it's easy to get caught in thinking that it's all about rules. Okay, what's the rule? How do I format my resume? Do I send a follow-up email? What are the rules for this? Or, and it's like, all those are kind of best practices, but those all emerge from a simple fact that is more important and fundamental than any rules. And that is, you're not playing by rules and responding to a system. You are dealing with individual human beings. And if you assume humanity, basic human emotion and self-interest and psychology, if you assume the humanity of the other party and imagine being like them in their shoes and think about what they would want and value, what would make their life easier versus what would be annoying to them, then you'll start to see things. Then you might start to see, if I was a business owner who posted this laptop picture, what would it feel like from my end if someone saw that and said, can you hire me right now? Right? And start to use that judgment. Think about it. What would it feel like if somebody sent me a one-word email response? What would I think if I owned this business and my new employee left right away? Even though they don't have to stay, what would I think? How would I feel? And start to think about, they're humans, they're people, right? It's like, again, with job applications, how many of them say, dear sir or madam, I would love to work at your company because I am XYZ, blah, blah, blah. I am this, that, and the other thing. I'm so good. If you're on a date with somebody, you don't approach it that way and say, hey, let me tell you 10 reasons I'm dateable, right? You say, let me tell you why I'm interested in you, because that's another person. In the world of business, there are other people behind every decision as well. There is no such thing as a corporation or an entity that makes decisions. It's individual humans. And if you start to think like that, same with customers, vendors, investors, they're humans with drives and motivations. And if you can put yourself in their shoes, it will help.
Isaac, I shouldn't have to do that though. I get what you're saying, but I shouldn't have to do that. People ought to just come out and say what they want or what they need. Your response.
Yeah, I shouldn't have to have an oxygen tank to walk around in, outer space. I hate that. That seems super stupid. Why haven't humans evolved beyond that? Doesn't matter what I think about it. Do I want to die in space or do I want to live? That's it. It's just cause and effect. I shouldn't have to take an umbrella with me when I go out if I live in Seattle. That's just too much stuff to carry around. I shouldn't have to do that. No one should have to own an umbrella. Well, you don't have to own an umbrella. If you want to keep your laptop dry, you might want to bring one because if it rains, it'll get wet. It's cause and effect. It's just the reality. It's the nature of reality itself. You don't have to like it, but if you want to navigate it, you can't spend all your time being upset that it is what it is. Treat it as a game and decide how you want to play.
Yeah, I shouldn't have to maintain composure if I'm talking to someone that I care about and everything in me wants to just yell at them and completely lose my cool. I shouldn't have to, but I'm willing to do it.
You have the right to do any of that stuff. And you have the right to accept the consequences as well.
Don't listen to what people advise. Pay attention to what people admire. It's kind of like the stated versus revealed preference distinction applied to advice. When people give you advice, they're taking into account so many different things, like how much responsibility are you going to assign to them if you fail, their perception of what you're capable of, their predictive abilities concerning what they think you might like, and a whole bunch of other things. But when you watch what people admire, you're getting an unconscious reaction from them that shows you exactly what they think success is. So for instance, most of the things we admire, we never advise other people to do. Everybody loves the J.K. Rowling story, right? The single parent being on welfare, then writing a children's story, something she never did before, making a bunch of money. Everybody loves the Tyler Perry story about, oh, this guy was 40 years old and he was homeless and spent his last little bit of savings on a play. But no one's going to advise you to do that, right? When you come to them and say, hey, what should I do? They'll be like, well, you don't even study theater, study communications and business. And they're going to give you like some conservative, boring path. And then when they finish giving you advice and they go talk with their friends and the advice filters off, they're going to talk up the people that do like crazy, like unconventional, rebellious
I'll
stuff.
break it down to an even smaller, more tangible, maybe more relatable example. Not that your examples were bad, TK. Those were good examples.
I think both of who's the other person I said?
I don't know, J.K. Rowling. And
I try to make it a point to not use two black people. I try to make it a point to not.
You were like, white people. Larry Bird and...
Like I'm still stuck on like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. I gotta study more white people so my examples can improve.
I study white people. So here's a concrete example of the. I like that, by the way. Don't listen to people's advice. Watch what they or listen to what they admire. You phrased it better than that. More Pentecostal. But just today, I was talking with Lolita, our producer of this podcast. Shout out to Lolita.
Shout out to Lolita,
and
aka Lola.
Speaking of Quora, she has like almost 500,000 views on Quora answers in the last month. She's crazy on there, but she had an answer to a question just the other day, and the question was something about what are the best green flags in an interview, and she basically said, forward tilt. If someone is physically leaning forward, it's a concept we talk about all the time. We have a whole podcast called Forward Tilt. She kind of gives this as like, this is a big green flag. The post blows up.
A green flag is a good
like,
thing.
Yeah, you want to hire this person, right?
So this is like the opposite of hip hop, which is lean back.
It's the opposite of a red flag. Yeah, exactly. You want to be like leaning in. I'm not going to get into it. So anyway, she was like, yeah, all these people are saying, well, you're oversimplifying it. Come on, that's not the only thing. Just because someone's physically leaning forward, they might stink in every other way. This is so oversimplified, blah, 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 blah. If you listen to the advice, not a single person would give her advice that's like, hey, Lolita, I advise you to keep giving answers exactly like this one that strip it down to one single trait and ignore all of the caveats. No one would say that. Right. What they will say is, well, you need to account for this. You need to be more nuanced. You need to have caveats. Not everyone works this way, blah, 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 blah. You're oversimplifying. But guess what? Her answer blew up. And if she took all that advice and made an answer that was like, well, there are several other factors, of course, and you got to make sure you do this, and don't oversimplify it. But one thing you could potentially look for is the way that someone's physical stature appears in the interview. But don't put too much stock into it because I can give you 10 examples of how that's not the case, blah, blah. No one would care about it, right? No one would care. So you can see it gets traction even though the advice is, and you made a funny tweet about this. Everyone's advice is, hey, could you be more boring and make sure you're accommodating more people and make sure you're doing something that couldn't possibly be misunderstood or offend anyone. Everyone will give you that advice. But guess what? What do they admire? They admire people that make bold statements that are easy to misunderstand, that are just one small aspect of reality without apologetically adding all kinds of caveats.
Oh, yeah. And who are they giving their attention to? Like, who are they reading? Who are they commenting on? I'm going to read that tweet because it's very apropos. It's the tweet says, people be like...
Can you quote yourself in a voice of you imitating yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
People... hey, buddy. That's me imitating Isaac's imitation of me. That's how I sound. Hey, buddy, here's how to be successful, buddy. Set yourself up for an inspiring life.
Dress your best for success and the rest.
So I said, people be like, hey, you should change your creative idea to this totally neutral and uncontroversial thing I'm suggesting. That way, no one will feel left out. Then I can have a good time being unprovoked by your undifferentiated value proposition, and I can go back to ignoring you. It's sort of like if I write a post aimed at college opt-outs, and it's a post that's encouraging them or shouting them out, there's always the person that's like, hey, don't you think you should have a qualifying statement letting people who go to college know that they are okay too? And it's like, people want you to write these statements or create work that just factors everybody in. It's marketed towards everybody. There's no way this can possibly exclude anyone.
Every article should have a list. the following people should all feel okay about themselves, despite what I say in this article.
Absolutely. But you look at what people watch. Turn the advice filter off. Don't even ask them for a minute. Take a break from that, because that's when the filter turns on. But just pay attention. Pay attention to what they watch on TV. Pay attention to what they read. Pay attention to who they talk about at cocktail parties. Do cocktail parties even still happen? But just pay attention to what they talk about, what they praise, and you'll find that their ideas of success are far more rebellious, far more provoking, far more contentious than the safe advice they give. And I think that's something really crucial to take into account, especially if you're part of the mentorship culture where you like to ask people what they think about your life.
This one comes from an Uber driver. We talked about the podcast, and he's like, "Oh, I got a question for you, and I'd love to hear your thoughts." So here we go. My younger brother is 19 years old and lives at home with our parents. He graduated high school a year ago, and our parents encourage him to stay at home and work instead of going to college. I'm okay with the idea of college not being for some people. My brother hasn't done anything productive since graduating high school. He doesn't have a job, and my parents don't really put any pressure on him. I think they're scared of pushing him out into the real world too fast. I try to tell him some of the stuff you guys talk about, and I try to let him know that he has a rare opportunity to try risky things at his age, that it's only going to get harder as he gets older, and that our parents won't be able to take care of him forever. I think he's scared. As a last resort, I've started to coax him into applying for college. He lacks initiative, and I think it would be good if he had 4 years to be around other young people, live on his own, and develop some courage bit by bit. Do you agree with me that college would be a good option for someone like my brother? What would you recommend for a special case like this?
All right. So let me clear one thing up first for the Uber driver. Thanks for the question. You cannot save your brother. So you have to relieve yourself of that burden. There's no magical way that you can phrase things that will finally get him to make the changes needed in his life that you feel are needed in his life. It can only come from him. So you can be there and answer questions and do whatever, and you can share your insight, but you can't take on that burden of feeling like it's up to you to ensure that he changes something. So for the brother, if you're listening, it's not about college or not college. If you're not motivated and not really doing anything, going to college will not fix that. Going to college will actually let you continue to be unmotivated at a much higher degree. You might have to be a little more motivated than you are now if you want to pass classes, if you're just literally doing nothing right now. But it won't push you to be that not motivated enough that you're going to need to be to succeed in the broader world. So you're going to be able to get away with being still not motivated enough for 4 or 5 years, and you're going to rack up a lot of debt. Now, college may or may not be something useful to you depending upon what your goals are and where you end up wanting to go. You know, you want to be a CPA and you decide you go get your degree so you can do that. Fine. But you got to solve a more fundamental problem first. And that's just a lack of motivation. And I would say there's only one way. You can play all these mental games and try to make yourself motivated. But the best way is when you literally have no choice but to be motivated, right? I think I've used this analogy a million times, but there's a great scene in the Dark Knight, one of the Dark Knight movies, the Christopher Nolan Batman movies, where he's trying to climb out of this cave and make this huge jump. And he just can't quite make it. And the guy's like, it's because you're wearing the rope. You got to cut off the rope so that literally you have to make it or you'll die. You know, inside, you know that if you fall, you'll still live. And that's why you can't make the jump. So get out of your parents' house, leave, and find a place to live. And now you're going to need to earn enough money to pay for it. And now you're going to need to do whatever it takes to get a job. And now you're going to need to start thinking about, wow, this job kind of sucks. I want a different one. Well, I need a car for that. And now you're going to have to do things necessary to get a car. And now necessity will push you to discover things about yourself, your capabilities that you never knew. And before long, you're going to be in a place where you have a lot more clarity, a lot more motivation, confidence, and ability because you've had to develop those things. If you don't have to develop them, you're going to have a hell of a time trying to play mental games with yourself to make yourself motivated. But you're 19 now. It's too long to have this giant safety net. Make yourself be in a position where you've got to, you know, it's not going to come to starvation, right? If your parents have you living at home now, if it's literally at that point, you're not going to die. The bottom isn't that far in this country anyway, where, you know, you're really in life-threatening danger. So put yourself in a situation where motivation is the only option.
All right, so let me come back with a devil's advocate to that one, man. One thing about college for most people at his age and stage is that it does allow them to do exactly what you said. Go to an environment where you kind of stop the clock, at least in an illusory sense. You're still going to be 4 years older when you graduate, but for the next 4 years, you don't have a ton of pressure to produce in the sense of pay your own rent or have a flattering job. You can be broke. You can work odd jobs. No one's going to judge you because everyone's going to look at you like, hey, you're investing towards the future. And maybe for him, this can be a good opportunity for him to be irresponsible for a little bit, be lazy for a little bit, but at least be out of the house, at least be around other people, at least be in an environment where even though he's lazy and afraid and completely unproductive, maybe he'll meet a couple of people that will sort of infect him with a higher level of thinking or some enthusiasm that can get him on a right path. I see some people out there and I think to myself, there's no way they're going to move out. No way they're going to do it. We can make an argument for why, but they're not going to leave that safety net. If they go out into the real world and work, they're just not going to have any real risk because they could screw up and mom and dad would bail them out anyway. So for somebody in that situation, wouldn't it just be better for them to go there?
Sorry if you heard some screaming in the background. It's Saturday today, and my girls are playing with the neighbors. And when my girls play, they basically just fight with the neighbors. They all fight with each other. Look, I mean, if your goal is to have people approve of you while you have no pressure to do anything, and you don't mind going into debt and potentially dramatically limiting your mid to longer term options for the rest of your life, then go to college. Because you're purchasing yourself a 4 to 5 year window where you will get nothing but approval from everybody in the outside world, whether or not you actually make progress on becoming who you want to be. Now, the cost is when you come out, you may have even worse habits. You may have even a harder time progressing to where you want to be in life. And you will likely have a huge financial obligation that limits you and a lot of pressure that you didn't have before you bought yourself that 4 or 5 years. Now, if the gamble is, it'll be worth it because in that 4 or 5 years, in this sort of quasi out of my parents' house, but not fully environment, I will grow strong enough into the kind of person who's capable of handling the debt and all the things at the end of that 4 or 5 years. That's a gamble. You can take that gamble. I think there are a lot cheaper ways though. If you just want to kind of goof around and like get a bunch of friends together, go find a really cheap place in the Caribbean and go live there for 6 months in a house that's a couple $100 a month and, teach surfing lessons 2 days a week to make the money or whatever it is. Ask your parents if they were going to pay for college, say, hey, I'll make you pay 20% of that cost for 6 months or whatever, for me to go live with some friends and goof off for a year or whatever. Like if your actual goal is to be semi-sheltered from reality and doing kind of fun stuff, I think there are cheaper ways that don't come with the debt shackles. But look, if at the end of the day, you prioritize making the next 4 or 5 years as easy as possible for yourself while getting everybody's approval, no matter what it costs you down the road, college sounds like a good fit.
Yeah. There's an old saying, I hope I get it right, but it's before enlightenment, chop wood and fetch water. After enlightenment, chop wood and fetch water. And the idea there is whether you're enlightened or not, whether you're meditating or not, you are not fully human unless you are managing some kind of responsibility or engaging in the creative process of doing some kind of meaningful work. And I think it captures sort of the limitations of relying entirely on meditation, conversation, content consumption, and other mental-based things as a way to kind of figure out your way in the world. I think there's just no shortcut to the knowledge you gain about yourself by doing work, even if it's not something that you absolutely love at first or if you'll like. And so, the advice I'll give to this Uber driver, if you're the only one that's going to listen to it and you have your parents' ear and the reason they want him to stay at home is to kind of, get some experience and not waste his money by going to college right away, I would say talk to them and say, hey, look, you're only going to make him worse if you just let him lounge around.
give him an ultimatum and say within 3 months. That's a lot of time. He's got to get a part-time job. If he wants to stay home, that's cool.
Make him pay rent, you know?
Yeah.
Make him pay $500 a month in rent.
Yeah, make them give you something. It's anything, even if it's only $50 a month, make them have to come up with an answer to that question of how am I going to consistently come up with $50 every month, and force him to use that creativity and sense of responsibility. I think that will be a dynamic solution. And I would go to him and say that same thing. Say, hey, doesn't matter what you do, man. Get a part-time job, build some momentum, because you don't want to spend all your time just sitting around watching TV, reading books.
You know, this might be one way to look at it. Given the description of this guy, my guess is the degree isn't going to do anything to put him in a better position. So the question is, look, you either learn to go work at Starbucks now, or you learn to go work at Starbucks in 4 years when you have a degree. You're still going to have to start at the same place, because college isn't going to let you bypass learning how to work. And so you're going to come out and you're going to get the same job you could get now. And you're going to be 4 years later and have some debt, but you're still going to have to work at Starbucks, because nobody's going to hire you because you're like, now you're like, I'm lazy and I have no experience. Hire me. In 4 years, you'll say, I'm lazy and I have no experience and I have debt and a piece of paper. Hire me. That's not any better of a sales pitch.
Yeah. And you know what? I actually think it would be really hard to work at Starbucks if you don't know how to work. I've done a lot of work in restaurants, and those are the kinds of places where you got to come in, you got to be willing to learn fast. You can't be entitled. You got to step up and hustle. It can be hard, fast moving work. And the customers are really demanding of you, and they expect you to be professional. So
yeah, they'll take a chance on you more than other jobs, but they will also fire you quickly if you don't step. Step up.
I love that. I love that statement, man. Going to college will not allow you to bypass learning how to work. Even if there's something you can do to increase the odds that you'll get your foot in the door somewhere, doesn't mean that you're going to know how to work. And that really is something that's easy to underestimate.
All right, so here's an idea proposal. I want to play around with this concept. The notion of realizing your potential is actually a trap. And you shouldn't care about that idea at all. It mostly causes problems. Here's why. All that matters is that you live freely according to your definition of living, of freedom. To some degree, you can do that now, but because we all have constraints in our lives, there are some sacrifices you might have to make in order to expand your freedom. But at the end of the day, all that matters is that you live freely. The notion of realizing your potential, on the other hand, sets you up to be easily manipulated. It sets you up to be confused about what other people want from you, because it has this connotation of like, Isaac, you could be so much more than what you are. And it can get you stuck in this trap of thinking about what I am right now and what I could be. And I'm gonna say what you could be, the possibility of who you could become doesn't matter at all unless you personally feel like it would make you more free. And if you feel it would make you more free, then pursue that because it makes you free, not because it's realizing your potential. That's irrelevant.
I think I can get down with that. I mean, you know that freedom is like my animating idea, on a personal level, on a career-wise, professional level, everything. That's what motivates me. So I obviously resonate with anyone talking about, becoming free as sort of the ultimate constant struggle as an individual. And I guess I can see, the way that we were talking about realize your potential, perhaps that language is too loose or it's not accurate. I guess I can see what you mean. If you have this idea that there's this thing called the version of me that I'm supposed to be or could be or ought to be, that can be a tool used to confuse or manipulate or distract or cause stress.
Think about all the people, for instance, who might say to you like, yeah, I appreciate what you're doing with Praxis and, your company in Charleston, but man, you could be out in Silicon Valley, man. Like, you're not realizing your full potential. And for you, it's like, that's not my full potential. Okay, that's something you think I could be doing that would be better, but I'm doing it the way I want to do it.
So I guess I would say, I don't think the problem is the idea of coming into your full potential. It's allowing anyone else's definition of your full potential to replace your own, which is very subtle
like,
and
I
can
see
happen.
more for you than what you're.
And I think with your own, you've got to know it's never something that's clearly in view 100%. It's, again, we've talked about this many times. It's more like the chiseling process than it is the constructing process, right? Where you keep removing things. Like I know that I don't like this feeling or this thing that I'm facing or this skill that I don't have. I got to remove the obstacles to that. And I'm going to come closer and closer into this kind of rough vision that gets clearer the more I move to it of what I can be, but making sure it's your vision of your potential and that you are always, that's what freedom is. It's not that you're just kind of floating around. It's that you're on a path that's your path. And even if your path turns out to be wrong and you got to go backwards and take a different, it's yours, right? And that I think is where the real power is. And when someone else says, let me tell you what your real potential is. Now you can listen because they may give insight that you say, you know what, that resonates. There's something in that, but you can't change to reach someone else's version of that. You've always got to stick to your own.
Yeah.